Rapunzel, the princess in the tower. Once upon a time, in a land filled with enchantment, there was a beautiful young girl named Rapunzel. She had the most splendid, long golden hair that shimmered like the sun. Rapunzel lived in a tall, secluded tower, hidden deep in the forest, with no doors or stairs. She was kept there by a wicked witch. Every day, the witch visited Rapunzel by standing below the tower and calling out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair!" Rapunzel would then let her long, braided hair fall down to the ground, and the witch would climb up to the top of the tower. Despite her situation, Rapunzel was not lonely. She had birds for friends, and she sang beautifully, which attracted all the creatures of the forest. They would listen to her sing from dawn till dusk, filling her days with joy. One day, a young prince was riding through the forest when he heard Rapunzel's lovely voice. He followed the sound and discovered the hidden tower. Curious, he watched how the witch called to Rapunzel and climbed up her hair. The next day, after the witch left, the prince approached the tower and called out as the witch did, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair!" Rapunzel, thinking it was the witch, let down her hair, and the prince climbed up. To Rapunzel's surprise, instead of the witch, a kind and gentle prince greeted her. They talked for hours, and Rapunzel felt a happiness she had never known. They agreed that the prince would visit her every day while the witch was away. As days passed, Rapunzel and the prince became friends. They planned to escape together so Rapunzel could be free from the tower and the witch. The prince brought Rapunzel a reel of silk each time he visited, which she wove into a ladder. However, before their plan could be completed, the witch discovered the prince's visits. In her wrath, she cut off Rapunzel's hair and banished her to a desolate land far away. When the prince came to the tower that night, the witch let down the severed hair, and the prince climbed up, only to find the wicked witch waiting for him. In his shock and despair, the prince fell from the tower but survived, though he was blinded by the thorns below. Despite his blindness, the prince wandered through the forest, searching for his beloved Rapunzel. After many months, he finally heard her singing. Overwhelmed with joy and guided by her voice, he found her. As they embraced, Rapunzel's tears of joy fell into the prince's eyes. Miraculously, his sight was restored. The couple returned to the prince's kingdom, where they were joyously welcomed. They married and lived happily ever after, surrounded by love, freedom, and the melodies of Rapunzel's enchanting songs. The end. Snow White. Once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. She had skin as white as snow, lips as red as a rose, and hair as black as ebony. Snow White was very kind and loved by everyone in the kingdom, except her stepmother, the queen. The queen was very vain and would often ask her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror would always say, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But one day, the mirror gave a different answer. It said, "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen was very jealous and decided to send Snow White away. She called a kind woodsman and asked him to take Snow White deep into the forest and leave her there. But the woodsman couldn't bear to harm Snow White, so he told her to run away and never come back. Snow White ran through the woods and stumbled upon a tiny cottage. It was the home of 7 friendly dwarfs who worked in a nearby mine. The dwarfs loved Snow White's gentle nature and invited her to stay with them, and she kept their home tidy and cooked delicious meals in return. Meanwhile, the queen found out that Snow White was still alive. She disguised herself as an old peddler and visited Snow White with a poisoned apple. Snow White took a bite and fell into a deep sleep. When the dwarfs came home and found Snow White, they were very sad. They placed her in a glass coffin in the woods. One day, a kind prince was riding through the forest, saw Snow White, and fell in love at first sight. He gently kissed her, and Snow White woke up. The spell was broken by the prince's true love kiss. Snow White and the prince got married and invited everyone in the kingdom, including the dwarfs, to their grand wedding. They all lived happily ever after. The end. Peter's Pan Magical Night. One starry night, in a cozy house by the sea, 3 children, Wendy, John, and Michael, were tucked into bed. Their room was filled with toys and storybooks, but tonight was going to be extra special. As the moon shone brightly, a magical boy named Peter Pan flew in through the window. He had sparkling green clothes and a laugh that sounded like chimes. With him was a tiny, glowing fairy named Tinker Bell. "Would you like to go on an adventure?" Peter asked with a twinkly smile. "Yes, please," the children cheered. With a sprinkle of Tinker Bell's fairy dust, they began to float. Giggling, they flew out of the window, across the starry sky, toward a place called Neverland. Neverland was a magical island with mermaids in shimmering waters, friendly Indians, and cheeky lost boys who played all day. There were no rules, no bedtime, and adventures around every corner. Peter showed them the wonders of Neverland. They played with the lost boys, raced the mermaids, and even had a tea party with the birds. But soon, they heard about Captain Hook, a funny but grumpy pirate who did not like Peter Pan. "He's just a bit lonely," Peter explained. So, Wendy suggested, "Let's invite him to play." Surprised but happy, Captain Hook joined their games. For the first time, he laughed and danced, forgetting to be grumpy. After a day full of fun, Peter flew Wendy, John, and Michael back home. They waved goodbye to Neverland, promising to remember their magical adventure. Back in their beds, the children drifted to sleep, dreams filled with pirates, fairies, and flying. And outside their window, Peter Pan winked and flew off into the night sky, off to find another adventure. The end.
Hello again, friends. Remember, every night is a chance to dream wonderful dreams. See you in the stars, little adventurers. Good night.